Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. This is the weekly live stream where we talk about job search and careers. And this is an interactive live stream, so that means it's your chance to ask me any questions, stuff you're wondering about, stuff you're struggling with. It's all fair game. If you've been a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to see the chat box and get in the chat box and let me know what you're wondering. The title of this is episode 145 of How to Get Hired. It's called The Job Interview Magic Words That Get You Hired. So we're going to be kicking things off talking about that today. As always, a special shout out goes out to my YouTube channel members. Snap. Membership has its privileges. And special thanks to my Patreons, my super thanks donors, and to you, my viewers and participants. You guys are awesome. And I mean that. I might sound like I don't mean it, but I do. Okay? Just take it from me. Yeah, these things are always more fun when you don't have adequate time to prepare. That's what I feel. It's kind of a personal challenge. You know, why be prepared for what you're doing? You know, just kind of fly through life by the seat of your pants. Yeah, let's get into this. Okay, here we go. So the job interview magic words that get you hired. There's a couple of things that the interviewer is looking for in a job interview, things that they don't explicitly state or that may not be obvious. Okay, they ask explicit questions, so they want you to give the answer to those questions, but they're not telling you specifically what they're looking for, because if they were to tell you that, you could fake it. You could game the system, right? So this is one of those. What they're looking for is a candidate that's not only qualified, not only likable, and they will get along with other people, they won't cause any problems, they'll kind of fit in, but they're looking for someone passionate, someone that wants to do this actual job. Now, for some job seekers, as you guys probably figured, that describes them. They really, really want to do this specific job, these duties, these responsibilities, this work, right? A lot of people, it doesn't describe them. They're really here for a paycheck. You get paid to do a job. That's why you get a job. That's what they're here for. You know what I mean? They're not super picky about who they work for or what they do. They're pretty easygoing and they'll swing with it. If you are paying them to do this, they'll do that. They're pretty accommodating. So that does describe a lot of candidates, and that's fine. And you would think that that's fine, but no. Recruiters in particular and hiring managers, they're looking for someone who not only wants to do the job and, do an honest day's work, but they're looking for someone who is suited and passionate about doing this specific type of work. Now, for some jobs, that's totally a tall order, There are some pretty crappy jobs out there. It's pretty hard to find someone who's passionate about doing that thing, doing that crappy job. But nevertheless, for better or worse, that's what interviewers are looking for, and they're looking for those candidates. What you may or may not realize is that every candidate they interview, each candidate, according to them, according to the employer, on paper is qualified. So it's not really about your qualifications. Excuse me. As you can probably tell by my deep, romantic kind of voice, I'm under the weather. There's a respiratory thing going around, so I have that. But no, that doesn't keep me back. So just bear with me today. Okay, they're looking for passion. They're looking for someone who's actually interested in the role. Now, they are speaking to several people, usually when they set up job interviews, several candidates, and those candidates were chosen because based on their applications, they're all fully qualified for the role. They meet at least the minimum qualifications, right? So if you try and imagine what the situation the recruiter or the hiring manager is going through, they're already talking to several people. Those several people, all of them are qualified. They all could do the job if they were given the chance, right? So in the interviews, you have to pare this down to one person that you offer the job to. And you can't just go on qualifications. The whole point of bringing them in for an interview is because you want to get to know who they are, right? It's not simply a matter of verifying qualifications. This is a critical thing. If it was, they wouldn't need to bring people in for interviews or even to do video interviews. You could just do background checks. You could contact someone and say, do we have your permission to do these checks? And then, by email or whatever, you say, yes, go ahead. And then they go, okay, we'll just do those checks, right? If it was all about qualifications, that's what they would need to do. But it isn't all about qualifications. They want to get to know who you are as a person, okay? It's not, they're already talking to several people that are fully qualified. Now they're looking at things like, can I work with you? Okay, if it's the hiring manager and you get hired, like if they select you, the hiring manager becomes your boss. That's who the hiring manager is, right? You report to the person who is now the hiring manager. So the big question is, do they want to work with you? If you're very off-putting as a person to them, or you guys just don't click. It's not about good, bad. It's about just different strokes. They're this type of person, very extrovert, very touchy-feely, very emotional, like, I don't know. And you're, the sort of very technical, very businesslike, very introverted type, person. That might not work so well, on a personal level, right? So maybe they're looking for a certain personality or whatever, right? So that's what job interviews are really about. All the things other than your qualifications. Don't be fooled by the fact that they ask you about your qualifications. That's just to provide content to talk about. What they're really assessing you on is things like your communication skills and things like your charisma and stuff like that during the interview, okay? So coming back to the topic today, the job interview magic words to get you hired. They're looking for someone who specifically wants to do this job. So something that's extremely powerful in a job interview for you to say is to simply tell them, I want this job. Okay, now that seems totally stupid and self-evident, but here's what's going on. First of all, in a job interview, you may feel that way. Okay, you might obviously want the job, that's why you're there, but you're really wanting it because of the compensation associated with it. That's why you're there. They're looking for someone who wants the actual job. You want to do this kind of work, okay? So the other element of this is that in a job interview, it's kind of awkward and hard to say these things sometimes, right? I don't know if you guys have experienced this. You could maybe tell me in the comments if you have. You go to a job interview, and first of all, it feels like an interrogation. They don't give you a chance to speak freely. They fire questions at you, and you're just sort of stuck answering the questions that they chose rather than saying something of your choosing. If you go down there thinking, okay, I have to remember, I got to tell them this, and I got to tell them this, make sure they walk out of there, or I walk out of there, and they know this about me, right? That's kind of hard sometimes because they control the conversation. They're the ones that ask you the questions. It's hard to sort of change the subject to something you want to say, right? So that can make this challenging, okay? Now, a good place to say this in a job interview is when they ask you about your strengths. They say, what are your strengths? Or they say, why should we hire you? Where you would answer by talking about your strengths, what you can bring, right? Or they say, why do you want this job? You say, well, I want this job because it seems like you're looking for someone who has this, this, this. I have this, this, and this. It seems like I'm a perfect fit, So whenever they ask you a question like that, like where you talk about your strengths, it's great to answer the question, but then tack on this. You say, and by the way, I want you to know something. And they say, okay, what? And you say, I want you to know that I want this job. And then you back it up. You explain why. You say, this would be a great opportunity for me. It combines all my skills, all my education, all my experience, or whatever. Some insert logical reason why it makes sense. Right? So that's a great way to frame this. You can say, I just want you to know something. I'd like to say something. I just want you to know that I want this job. This is a great opportunity. It allows me to bring, my skills from different areas. It's in the field that I'm interested in. It's the type of work that, I've been doing for my whole working life, for my career so far. This is a step forward for me. It's a step up, whatever, insert reason, magic words, because that's what they're looking for. So when you come out and say it and you can back it up, some flags go up, light bulbs turn on, whatever you call it, and it makes a big impression. Okay. Just Me Ed is here. Get in the chat. This is primarily an interactive live stream, so I've kind of talked about the title. Do you guys have any questions? Let me know. Anything you're wondering about interviews, resumes, job search, networking, that kind of stuff. Bug 5654 is here. Says, I've been using AI as a judge of my writing, as a judge of my writing my resume versus job description for things like ATS keyword fit. Thoughts on appropriate and inappropriate use of AI in the job search? Well, when you say appropriate and inappropriate use, that now you're getting into sort of like right and wrong. I mean, if you're just asking it questions or getting it to do some work for you, which is its function, I don't see, nothing leaps to mind of like an inappropriate use of AI, like or certainly like a chatbot like ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you want to talk about the morality of this or you want to talk about practical tips that can help you. Okay, now for writing a resume, first of all, let's talk about that if you want to talk about that. That's very relevant. A lot of people are wondering about this. First of all, today, in this day and age, in the days of AI and predominant widespread ATS, applicant tracking software, and for those who don't know, that's the software that the recruiters use to filter your application. So you apply for a job, it doesn't get read by a human. First, it goes to a computer, it scans it and ranks all the applications and then presents only the top ones, the ones that ranked as best to the human, to the recruiter. Okay? Now, in this day and age where they're using that kind of software on their end, okay, your greatest ally, your weapon against this is AI. It's not that AI is really doing something that you can't. You can do anything that ChatGPT can do, really, in terms of writing a resume. It's just that AI can do it like 150 times faster than you could. How long would it take you to customize a resume? An hour? Give or take? It would take a long time. How long does it take ChatGPT to do it? About 30 seconds. You know what I'm saying? So if you are applying for jobs and you know that in order to stand a reasonable chance of getting a call back for an interview, you would have to send a tailored resume with a tailored cover letter, like something that's customized to that job. You have to do this. So you work on it. If you're doing it manually, it could take you an hour, 2 hours, like to do a customized resume plus an application plus a customized cover letter. That could take a while, right? Now with AI, you could achieve essentially the same result in like a couple of minutes. Okay? That's the advantage. Now, listen, I'm not here to impose my moral views on people. Like whatever you think is fair, whatever you think is appropriate, that's fine with me. I'm looking at this from a practical point of view, and I can tell you that a lot of applicants out there are using AI tools and they're using them to their full potential to play this game, and they're competing with you to get jobs. So my personal take is that there's nothing inappropriate about using these tools any more than there's anything inappropriate about using something like spell check. Isn't that kind of dishonest in a way? You can't spell, but you're trying to fool someone into thinking you can spell perfectly. Would you say that's dishonest? Some people say yes. It's the same argument with AI. So listen, whatever side you're on it, you can do it. But what I'd recommend is when you're writing a resume these days and it's going through an ATS filter and you're worried about keyword matching, key phrase matching, and having certain things on there that you know that they look for, I think AI is perfectly fine. A lot of people are using it to great success. You kind of have to now to stand a reasonable chance of getting a callback, for a lot of things. If you're going through posted jobs, there's a whole other thing called the hidden job market. That's where 80% of the jobs are. That's a whole other thing. You don't do any of this to tap the hidden job market. But if you're going for posted jobs, you kind of have to go this route. And what I'd recommend is you go to ChatGPT or whatever search bot, you enter in the entire text of the job posting. Okay, say, here's the job, the entire text. It says, okay. And then you say, here is the entire text of my master resume. So you have a master resume. It's got everything in there that you would ever put on a resume, right? A lot of optional things on there. And you paste that into ChatGPT or whatever chatbot or AI chatbot of your choice. And then you say, okay, here's my resume. And then you say, listen, I want you to create for me a customized version of my master resume that I'm going to use to apply to that job. And I want you to maximize its match, because it's going to go through ATS, and I want to stand the highest chance of getting an interview for this. So can you please do that? And it'll do that. And in a couple of seconds, it'll spit out a customized version of your resume in text form. You take that, you paste it into a Word document or whatever you use, and you send that on. And that will give you maximum likelihood of getting a callback, because it's going to be using the same lingo that was used in the job posting. It's going to be drawing attention to the requirements that they said they were looking for. You're going to put those front and center. Even if you don't fully meet them, you're going to say, like, well, that requirement's not a problem for me. You're looking for 5 years experience in this. Well, I got 3.5, and I've worked with people who have 20 years experience in that, and I kept up with them. Things like this, right? So it's going to address all of those front and center, and it'll give you the greatest likelihood of your application getting a callback, right? So that's how I'd recommend people use it. I mean, go ahead and do whatever you want based on how you feel about using AI tools and stuff. But that's what I would say. Gen 16 says, any simple systems to track job applications? Any simple system to track job applications? You mean like you're applying for a ton of jobs and you forget which ones you applied for. So when you get a callback, you kind of don't know which one it was for. I don't know. I'd throw it all into a folder. Now, if you're doing this on a Windows PC or something, I mean, already the date code of like that, when that file was created and when it was modified, that's all automatically in the file, right? So if you throw it into a folder, you can search them by date, you can search them by title. If you save the website, like, you go, if you're looking at a job posting online and it's in your web browser, you can say save that page, and it will save it in a variety of forms to a file, and then you throw that in the folder too, right? If you want to go to greater lengths, then you can. You could like create a folder for every application you send. In the folder, you have the original posting, and then you have the version of the resume you sent, like any document you sent. It really depends on how much effort you want to go to, right? One way of looking at it that kind of strikes a balance between work involved and, greater information, like the sort of maximum efficiency, is to just keep everything. Don't take a lot of time in organizing it or categorizing it. Just keep it. Maybe throw everything into a generic folder. And then if you do get a call back, it is possible to find the original posting and anything you sent to them. Okay, so it is there. It just, it might be take you a little longer to retrieve it, but it is there, right? But then you save yourself all the organizational steps while you're going through your job search, like documenting what you did. I don't know if that helps. Guy03i says, I worry they may use detection software to filter out AI written applications. Yeah, I worry that candidates use detection software to detect idiot recruiters who, are of no use to themselves or anyone else. That's my greatest worry. Maybe some people might be onto these people and finally realize that they're morons. It's like, I think we need to invest in software that will detect the use of a spell checker and grammar checker while we're at it. And that way we can really focus on what's important, put it that way. Listen, I think that some people do use that software. I believe it's a minority of people. That's just my personal opinion. Because as we go into the future, nobody gives a rat's ass. Everybody's using AI. Like, that's just how things are going. If they're not quite there yet, they're going to be there very soon. In the same way that everybody's using proofing tools for when they write like a document. You know what I mean? Does that mean you're doing anything unscrupulous? Well, society has basically said no in the case of proofing tools, right? Because at the time, nobody remembers anymore. I'm old, so I remember. I mean, it was controversial at the time because people would spend a lot of time learning their spelling and grammar and writing properly. And then along comes this software that can take, so that any doofus can write something and it fixes it all up for you. And then you appear a lot more literate than you actually are. That was actually quite controversial back in the day. They banned it in schools and like all this kind of stuff. Now, nobody gives a rat's ass. It's just commonplace, right? And AI is kind of the same thing. It's just, at least in that term, it's the same thing. What matters is that what's on your resume is genuine. If you say you have a certain qualification, the thing that matters is that you have that qualification. If AI rephrased the sentence for you, you know what I mean? I think we're at the point where most people don't care. In academia, they still have hangups about this, like schools, universities, colleges. They still have a bit of hangups about that. But out in the real world, in the private sector, just everything I see, nobody cares. It's just commonplace, So listen, I'm not here to impose my values on you or tell you you're wrong or something, but that's just my personal take on it. You asked me, so that's kind of, what I'd say about that. It may be true that, a couple of people are using the software and maybe it actually works and it can detect certain things. The one thing I know about things like ChatGPT is it uses that stupid dash, right? That long dash that no one ever uses. So it's almost like a signature that ChatGPT wrote some text because it's got those long dashes in it. I don't know if there's any other little things like that, but I know that's one. So whenever you create some text with it, you say, go back and replace all long dashes with short dashes or something, or a semicolon or something. Maybe not a semicolon, but you get the idea. Hello to 411 B5 Hoang Viet. Right on. We go way back together, I can tell you that much. Hello, sir, or madam, as the case may be. Zeros says, hi, Bill. Got an interview tomorrow. I'm well prepared. Wanted to find out if you got any extra tips in mind. Thanks in advance. Okay, so this is what I'd say, Zeros. First of all, best of luck to you. And remember that the biggest thing that they care about in a job interview, even if it's like a video interview, it doesn't have to be face-to-face, it's how likable you are. Do they want to work with this person? The fact that you're at an interview, that shows that they think on paper you're qualified. You're perfectly qualified to do the job, right? The only question now is whether they want to work with you. Okay? So go in there, try and be as agreeable and as friendly as you can. I know you're probably going to be nervous. Everybody's nervous in job interviews. It's all right. You're not on your turf. You're outside of your comfort zone. But despite all that, try and be as, kind of, hey, and just agreeable. They ask you to do something, sure, not a problem. Just very agreeable. To be the type of person they would want to work with. And I'm saying this because a lot of people go to interviews and they're like this. They're kind of nervous and upset and uncomfortable, and they're preoccupied with trying to remember their lines and all this kind of stuff. Just, it's going to be fine. Go in there, just relax, try and be friendly and agreeable. Don't get offended by every little thing, even if there's a couple of things that they do that are just a little bit off. A lot of recruiters and things, you would think they would know etiquette and manners. You would think that they would know this, choosing a profession where they work with people all the time. But no, they don't. So they do things that, are almost a little rude. A lot of them do that, They're trying to be polite, but they don't know how. And, you know what I mean? So you're not exactly dealing with international ambassadors here. You know what I mean? So just don't get offended by if they do something that's a bit off. Give them the benefit of the doubt, just so you don't get all offended and because that will disqualify you. It's so stupid, but it's true. That will disqualify you automatically, no matter how qualified and amazing you are. So hopefully that makes sense. Best of luck. SA340 says, "Hi Bill, I did an interview 2 weeks ago with the general manager of a company. Do you recommend contacting them to know the status or leave it? I can go to their office as they are near me. What do you recommend?" Okay, so what I would recommend is, yes, follow up. Okay, follow up. Now, the critical thing is to know how much time needs to pass before you follow up. 2 weeks is plenty. Ideally, in a perfect world, you would follow up before that. Okay, maybe after a week. Or 3 business days. You would contact them. You would contact the hiring manager, the general manager. So if you have that person's email or something like that, that would be ideal. If you got a business card, something like that. And you would say something like, "Listen, just following up, I would like you to know, I had a great time, and it was a pleasure to meet you. And, I found what you said very interesting, and I'm very excited about this opportunity. And should you have any questions, please let me know, because I'm really excited to hear where this goes. Thank you and have a great day." Something like that. So I would do that after maybe 3 days, something like that. There's a thank you note, and there's a follow up. I mean, the line kind of blurs between these things. But after 2 weeks, 2 things. Number one, definitely follow up. And at 2 weeks, it's starting to get into that period where if it's a yes, you would have probably heard by now. Okay, I don't mean to be discouraging, but usually these things happen fast when they happen, but there are always exceptions, right? So, okay, when you follow up, you're signaling that you're interested, right? We talked about that because that's kind of the theme of this episode, right? The magic words to get you hired. It's basically when you say, "I want this job. I'm passionate about doing this." Right? So when you follow up, that signals you care. I would not follow up with general applications, but I would follow up on interviews. M dashes, yes, definite sign of GPT. Yes. Yeah, those dashes. Alex Rosca says, "Still AI is top notch. You say, create me an app and practice coding with it. I've discovered sort of curiosity in learning coding. I practice the Java with it." Yeah, I've heard people say that. All I know is that it can be fantastic for some conversations, but things like ChatGPT, it always gets me how effing stupid that thing can be sometimes. It goes from really high level intelligence analyzing something you ask it about to not being able to do the stupidest goddamn thing. you know what I mean? It's an interesting mix of the two, So yeah. Matthew Harding says, Why would a company advertise a salary range for a role yet indicate before the interview process that they will not go past the midpoint of the range? Could they be bluffing? Okay. Excellent question, Matthew. Strap yourself in for some reality here. I'm going to spare you the lecture, but I'm just going to set this up very briefly. I'm going to say this. We go through school. In school, we learn to conform, to follow rules. We learn and we get used to this idea that we're going to be told what to do. We're going to be given a process, right? And we're told to trust authority figures, right? And, you should in school, I guess. It's not, your teachers aren't working against you, right? However, here is a different situation, okay? Here's a company or an organization. They're an employer, right? And in some ways, your interests align with theirs, right? So in some ways, they're your friend, they're your ally. But in some other ways, they are your adversary, okay? For example, you brought up the salary question, right? Well, this is a win-lose issue, okay? For you to get paid more money, it means that you cost them more. Their expenses go up, right? So it's a win-lose, They have a vested interest in you thinking that you're only worth like a tiny amount and you should be happy to work for them. And you should thank your lucky stars that they're giving you a job. And you should never, ever contemplate leaving, right? It's to their best interest if you think like this. That way you'll work for them under intolerable conditions. You'll be exploited. You'll work for peanuts. You'll never leave, and you'll do every little thing that they say, no matter how stupid or inappropriate, right? Now, that sounds all very dramatic, but that is essentially what's going on. I know. I ran a company. I'm telling you, this is real. So, in addition, I can't speak for every recruiter on the planet, but the general principle is that if they can find a talented candidate, but find them for less money, they can get that talented candidate for cheap. They look like heroes. It's like when you go to the store and you find this thing you're looking for at a certain store who's only charging just a little bit of money. It's selling for very cheap. You're like, yes, I got my thing that I wanted and I got it for cheap, right? The fact that they can get a candidate at all is not really an accomplishment. You know what I'm saying? You throw money at the problem, you can get anyone, right? So the challenge is, you got to get a good candidate for only a little amount of money. That takes some talent, right? That's the idea. So they're going to try every trick in the book to convince you that, you should accept a low salary or a low wage to do your job. That's what they do, right? And in return, you are going to use every trick in the book to try and push them to pay you as much as they possibly can, right? You have polar opposite incentives on this, right? So they're going to lie, they're going to be misleading, they're going to say all kinds of falsehoods right to your face. They're going to lie straight through right through their teeth, right to your face, and tell you all kinds of things that are totally false, but the goal is to make you be happy with the lower compensation. And there's like a whole playbook of, all the kind of tactics they use for this, right? Starting with a salary range. A lot of times the salary range that they post is crap. It's false. They got to post a range officially. Yeah, here's your range. Unbeknownst to you, they would go a lot higher, but they want you to think this. That's what they tell you. And a lot of people read it and they go, well, I just accept that as true, right? Okay, what you find is that that's not true. That's what they want you to think, right? Okay. Now, normally you don't antagonize your employer like this, but this is an issue where, as I said, it's a win-lose. Like it's, for you to win, they have to lose, and for them to win, you have to lose. That's the nature of this. So you can be damn sure they're going to be looking out for their interests and not yours. Right? That's the theme of this. Okay? So now to get to your specific question, They advertise a salary range, yet they indicate before the interview that they will not go past the midpoint. Yeah, well, hello, that's a total contradiction. So obviously, at least a part of that is false, right? If they're not going to go past the mid-range, then in what sense does the salary range continue up to the top of the range they posted, right? Exactly. You're not stupid to notice this, right? So of course they're bluffing. They're either bluffing on we will not go past this point, which is very likely, or the range itself was misleading in the first place, which is also common. Or both, as an added bonus, right? So that's what you're up against. The great thing is that succeeding at this game doesn't require you to convince anyone that you're reasonable. The way this stuff works is you say, no, I need this much. And they could say, yeah, but that doesn't make any sense. It's like, no, yeah, sure, yeah, maybe, but I still need that much. I'll get back to you. Let me know when you can change that number and cross out that number and write in this number. When you do that, then I'll sign. Have a good day, right? You don't have to convince anyone of anything. You just have to stick to your guns. Now, stick to something that's reasonable, but that's the deal. You don't have to convince anybody. You just have to accept what makes sense to you, and you don't accept what doesn't make sense to you. That's the name of this game. Hopefully that's somewhat helpful. 4011, oh, my close personal friend, 4011 B5 Hoag Viet. We go way back to the good old days. Says, I'm a student in university now, and my major is cybercrime. Oh, okay. Wow. Do you have to dress up like RoboCop? I got some good points and of some projects of mine, but do you think there will be any chances for me in the world that AI is everywhere? Of course. Of course. Absolutely. That's like saying, is there going to be any place for me in the world of grammar checkers? Yeah. It's everywhere. When computers came, it changed some stuff. That's an understatement. But it's not like everyone was out of a job. Things just readjust slightly. People freak out, and some justifiably so if your job is affected, but people freak out because now they're not in control of the change. All this talk for years in the business community about disruption, it was like this buzzword, disruption. These people don't understand what disruption is. So along comes something that's truly disruptive, AI, for the first time in like 15 years at least. You get something that's actually disruptive, and these people freak out. They can't handle it. It's going to be fine. The world will still exist. People will still have jobs. Everything will be fine. And I can tell you something, and that is that cybercrime will still exist. And the people that can protect a business or an organization from cybercrime will still be in demand. The tools evolve, but that game of cat and mouse continues. Okay? Now, I'm not sure about the details that you would have to change personally. Okay? I can tell you how to find out those details. I don't know what the details are, but there will still be a need for you. Okay? You're going to be fine. Just beware that if you're in school, like you said, you're in university now. Okay? Now, I don't know about your particular case, okay, but the trend has been that educational institutions are slow to change. So there's a lag between what's going on in the real world and what's being taught in school. And in areas that move very fast, they're on the cutting edge of technology, like cybercrime. A lot of IT areas, there's a gap between like what's actually going on and what they're teaching in school. So in order to sort of cover your bases, okay, just stay on top of like as much as possible what's going on in the real world. Okay, there's many ways to do that. The most basic possible thing you could do is like just look at the news, look up certain companies you're interested in, what's going on with this technology, with that stuff. Okay, and don't just live in a bubble in school and like where you don't look at the outside world, you don't look at the IT industry or the cybercrime industry, security industry. Does that make sense? And you should be fine. Lewis says, hello, Bill. I've been watching you for a while. Thank you for the amazing content. Well, thank you, Lewis. That's very civil of you. I appreciate that awesome feedback and high praise. I'll try to live up to that. SA340 says, the GM told me that they will have to do other interviews, so I thought to give... Yeah, everybody loves hearing that, don't they? You love it when the person you're talking to tells you they have to talk to other candidates, right? You always love that. That's what I mean about etiquette. People don't like hearing that. You want the candidate to feel that they're the only one that matters to you. That's what makes people feel good, right? Just like you don't tell the employer that you're also interviewing with a bunch of other companies if you are, or you're looking elsewhere. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear that you're dedicated to them. That's what they want to hear. You know what I mean? It's just these people, they need to start treating other people with respect. So I thought to give them the space before checking on them. Also, the interview with the GM was a tough discussion. Lots of back and forths. Listen, follow up once, okay? And then move on. That's what I would say. Okay? Don't spend your time thinking about this, worrying about it, obsessing about it, worrying if should I follow up now or maybe in 2 days? Just don't worry about it. Follow up now, send some kind of note to the general manager and a separate one to the recruiter if you were dealing with the recruiter separately, okay? Or anyone else. And that's it. They know, they have your information if they want to get in touch with you. You move on. Generate new opportunities. Go get some new interviews lined up. Okay? That's what's going to make you feel good, and that's what's going to get, you employed as soon as possible. Alex Roska says, as for jobs, I appreciate your advice and practice them in reality. I followed up open jobs from HR, and I have one lead by following on WhatsApp about job ads. One popped up. Okay, that sounds like a good thing. Sounds very encouraging. SA340 says, too much politics in these interviews to get a job. Yeah, that's the magic of living right now, isn't it? Fortunately, when it matters, people can just get down to brass tacks and leave all that stuff at the door. Stormtrooper V8 says, focusing on passion's a good idea indirectly. I got an interview at a car battery place today. The Car Battery Explosion of Love. Is that the name of the place? That's what it should be. You can tell them that for me. I draw cars, okay? I'm coming in to learn. Also, cope with reality of car dependency while not feeling victim. Well, it is an alternative to a unicycle. You can't argue with that. Or the halfway house, which is a motorized unicycle. That doesn't get as much press as it should. Stormtrooper V8 says, just came from ending at grocery store, bagger for 22 years old. Okay. Well, you're moving up in the world, so that's good. It's always a good thing. It's a natural progression, Alex Rosca, as for networking, an ex-colleague that worked with me keeps me up to date about the situation at another company, one that hires next week. Networking and following. Okay, that's great. So you got a personal connection that's given you a lead for a job. That's great. That's one type of networking. Like knowing a bunch of people and then, sort of like asking around to see if anyone has any leads for you. That is one type of networking, but it's not the most common or prevalent type of networking, and it's not the one that usually gets you hired. Like it does work sometimes, but it's not the most common method. What's another method of networking that's more effective for getting a job is direct outreach. That's where you don't know the people, but you reach out to them, right? And I've talked about this a number of times. I'm just going to say it here in case anybody is interested, but basically it's like you find all the employers around you in your city or whatever, your area, the ones that have potential to employ you, like for example, you have an accounting degree and there's an accounting firm next door, like they employ accountants. So it's like, okay, you have a chance of employing me, right? I know you employ accountants. I'm an accountant. right? So finding out that they exist, getting their contact information, finding the right person at the organization. You can do all this through Google Maps and LinkedIn, very, very simply. And then you send them a note. You say, listen, if ever you're looking for an amazing accountant, right? That's me. Hello, my name is John, whatever. I always say John, it's the most common name. Hello, my name is Francine. Yes, I'm a guy and I'm called Francine, but let's not worry about that right now. I'm a fully qualified accountant. I specialize in this area of accounting. And if ever you're looking for an accountant to join your team, let me know, because I know you guys do good work in this area. I live very close by. I'd love to work for you. Thank you and have a great day. Right? You're not bothering them. You're not trying to fish for something. You're just saying, look, I'm here. I can do this. If ever you're looking for that, let me know. If you're not, that's fine. But if you are, pick me. Right? And the added advantage is that you're signaling your professionalism. You're giving them a sample of your communication skills. You're showing them how passionate you are and how interested you are by even doing this, right? So, you know what I mean? That's the idea. And the key thing here is that you're not looking at posted jobs. This has nothing to do with posted jobs. In fact, if they do have a posted job, this probably won't be very effective. They'll just say, well, go and apply on our website. The reality is that most places that hire, they don't post the job publicly, right? So just because there's a place has not got any job postings doesn't mean they're not hiring. You don't know. There's no way to know unless you're on the inside of it. So if we're on the outside, you send messages like this, right? You say, if you're hiring, if you're looking, I'd like to work for you. Alpine's Pal says, hi, Bill, would you recommend becoming a banker even if temporarily to understand economics? Working as a banker is not going to really help you with economics. That happens at a very high level. So unless you're going to start your banking career as like some kind of vice president or something, economics are usually not going to come into it. In order to be in a bank, the thing that the industry they're in, what they deal with is finance, right? Finance and accounting, but mainly finance. Finance is the study of money in the future. Accounting is the study of money in the past, right? Accounting answers questions like, where did the money go? Did we make a profit? Right? That's all stuff in the past. Where are the receipts? Right? How much tax did we pay? That's accounting. Finance is saying, if we invest in this, what are the chances it'll pay off? Right? How can we raise money? Where can we go to get money? That's all finance. So if you're thinking of working in the banking industry, finance is kind of what you would study on some level. You know what I mean? And, I would recommend doing it if it's your calling, if you're interested in it. You know what I mean? And then beyond that, beyond anything I say, go and do an informational interview with a bank manager. Just say, hey, I'd love to get your opinion on the banking industry and what skills are needed in this industry and what makes a good banker. Ask them these kinds of questions and see what they say, and they will give you pointers. They'll give you an idea of what it takes and what they're looking for and all that kind of stuff. I actually think that bank managers down, they're just grunts. It's the people that are at the head office that are really running the show. It's amazing how even bank managers that run a branch of a big bank, how low level they are, Anyway. Just Me Ed, with 2 Ds, says, they will tell you it's a junior role if your expectation is higher, yet when you research the role, the rage is higher. I guess the wage? Well, the rage could be higher too, depending on who you're dealing with. Yeah, exactly. Like you're stepping into a bigger world. You're noticing that what they're saying doesn't add up. Right? That's because it doesn't add up because they're lying to you, right? They're looking out for their interests and they're managing your opinions and your expectations. at least I'm just playing the averages. That's what most people are doing in these situations. Just me, Ed. When do you try to negotiate with the recruiter during the screening call, or wait till you get to the interview with the hiring manager? No and no. You do not try to negotiate until you get a written offer. Okay, because what's going on is that they're talking to several people. They're still considering several people. They're talking to you, and they're talking to one or more other candidates, right? They haven't yet made a decision on who they're going to pick. Now, if you suddenly start playing hardball and say, well, I'm not interested for anything less than 100,000, right? Or I need, 35 weeks vacation a year, or hey, I'm not interested. All they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, fine, no, and then they're going to talk to the other candidates, right? So the only time you have any semblance of any negotiating power is when they've decided on you. They've all had internal discussions between the recruiter, the hiring manager, anyone else. They've discussed it. They've decided we're going to offer it to you, right? Now, if you throw it back in their face, that's going to be not only embarrassing for the recruiter who recommended you to the hiring manager, because the recruiter is supposed to be the expert, right? It's going to be embarrassing for them if they have to go back and say, they rejected our offer. They said no. We have to then go have more meetings and decide if we're going to offer it to the runner-up, or we're going to repost it, or what we're going to do, right? That extends the amount of work they have to do, the amount of time they have to do. They now have to draft a new offer for the next candidate, do background checks, blah, 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 right? That's a lot of work. It's a lot of pain. So you have a little bit of power in the sense that, if you say no, they're feeling pain, right? It's not insurmountable, but it is an inconvenience, and it's embarrassing for some people. So they don't want you to say no. So if you're asking for something, just some minor detail, like, sure, whatever, yeah, okay, fine. If that gets you to sign it and we get this thing in the bag, sure. Yeah, let's do that. The other thing is, I was doing a collaborative live stream 2 days ago on Monday, where every 2 weeks I do a live stream with another YouTuber who's a recruiter. And she was giving some insight into this. She was saying that, from her perspective, from the recruiter's perspective, they expect candidates to negotiate most of the time. Okay, and that's when you do it, right at the end of the process. Okay, so don't try and negotiate and play hardball like, in the first stages. Don't try and do any of that before you get a written offer in your hand. That's the only time you can negotiate. It's the only time it'll actually work. Hopefully that makes sense. But good question. Mr. Good Times says, hi, Bill. I'm glad I was notified of your live video today. I'm going to a networking reception soon where I possibly will be able to try your approach there or in a following interview. Okay, well, best of luck to you, Mr. Good Times. I like your name. It's professional, yet it says you're here to party. That's good. Robert Gates, no relation, says, you can also find those companies by driving to local office parks and looking at their directory. Yeah, well, you could also find them on Google Maps, too. There is a video that you guys should all check out. I'm not trying to get you to leave, but it's in the description box of this live stream. Okay, so right under the video feed, usually, I have links to several different things. One is a video of mine called How Successful People Get Jobs. Watch that video. That's me on Google Maps and LinkedIn showing you the process of direct outreach. So if you've never done anything like that before, go and watch that video. Okay? It might be enlightening for you if you've never seen that. And also, by the way, I'd just like to take the moment to remind everyone, if you are confused about how job search works, you're doing job search, it's not really going anywhere quickly, you don't understand things like the hidden job market, stuff like that, take that course, okay? My Get Hired course. Link in the description. It's all my advice in one place with templates, processes, everything. And critically, it's the only place where I've really explained the hidden job market from beginning to end. It's very hard to do in pieces like videos and live streams. I have to put it into a course. So check that out. Best bang for the buck around. Alpine's Pal says, I've heard advice that with AI, you don't need to go to college for years when you can learn the skills with workshops and other sources. Seems like self-learning is the best investment you can do. Yes. I'm not going to... Listen, I'm not going to agree with the fact that it completely replaces formal education, because it doesn't. But it's effing useful, and it's effing effective, and you should definitely do it. The more you learn, the further you'll go. And the more you learn about people, the further you'll go. Okay, take it from me. I'm a lifelong introvert. I got an engineering degree. I'm a very technical person. I'm extremely organized. Take it from me. The more you learn about people, the more doors will be opened up in front of you. The more opportunities will open up in front of you. Okay, the more you can communicate with other people, the more you know how to reach out to people and get assistance, get questions answered, get help, you can ask for a meeting, you can ask for a conversation, you could ask for whatever. The more you know how to do that stuff, and the more personal charisma you have, okay, the more people that interact with you and they think, that was awesome, I'm sad that's over, I'd like to interact with that person again because they're awesome. They make me feel good about myself, and I enjoyed the interaction. The more people think that about you, the better things will go for you, okay? So investing in not just learning some random stuff, like self-learning is good, okay? Learning on your own is good. But in particular, learning that kind of stuff, that will open up so many doors for you. 4011 Hoang Viet says, I got it, sir. Thank you very much. First, really sorry for the rough nickname. It's my study purpose. Don't worry about it. You're doing fine. Hoang Viet, and you're awesome. Don't let anybody ever convince you you're not. Okay? I'm dead serious. And to be honest, you helped me clear my confusion. And I have one more confusion. Like, I heard the companies, they have some special words for hiring. Okay, I don't quite understand that last sentence. So if you could explain that, like, I heard the companies, they have some special words for hiring. Maybe if you could just clarify, that would be helpful. Alex says, if I practice sending errors in a... What? If I've practiced sending errors in a PC game like ETS2 and ATS in the mapping community and copy that in my CV, GPT created me a CV variant, easier to learn, and parameters in gaming. Okay, I'm not sure if that's a question. It's like a statement, so I don't know. I'm unfamiliar with all the finer details of gaming and what you would put on a resume for it. You can get answers to those questions, if you're really into it. Okay, Hoang Viet says, like, when you have those words in your CV resume, you will pass the first round. Is that true? Yes. There, you see, especially if there's ATS. Like, we were talking about ATS earlier in the stream. It stands for Application Tracking Software, or Application Tracking System. And it's like an AI filter. These days, it's an AI filter that when you send in an application for a job, it first gets read by a computer. The computer scans your application, like usually your resume or cover letter, and ranks it compared to all the other applications that they've received for that job. And then what it does is it presents the human, usually the recruiter, with it almost looks like an email app where you have like all the emails, ranked in order, like first this, then this, then this. It does that. It says, this is the most promising application we've received. It's got the most things in the application that we said that we're looking for, right? So that could include keywords, key phrases, different things that you're talking about.
It can include stuff that they disclosed in the job posting. It can also include stuff that they haven't disclosed, but they're still looking for. Unbeknownst to you, they're looking for someone who comes from, I don't know, a background in physical education. They didn't mention that on the job posting, but that's one of the things they're looking for. So they kept that on the down low. They haven't disclosed that because they want to see if organically they can detect that, right? If they'll be able to find it. So that's what ATS does. So yes, you need to customize your resume and your cover letter and any other part of your application to the specific job you're applying for. You can't just have a resume that you use it to apply for every job, right? Like a master resume. That doesn't really work anymore. It really doesn't. That worked like 5 years ago, but that doesn't really work anymore because, of various reasons. But so when you customize your resume, you're going to look for certain things. Now, certain well-known things are using their own lingo, right? Their own expressions, how they describe things, right? So, for example, you could refer to a supervisor as a frontline manager. You could also refer to a supervisor as a lead hand or a lead associate. You know what I'm saying? Like there's different ways of describing it. And sometimes they're looking for very specific terms, the terms they use for this that they used in the job description. So if they said they're looking for someone that's a lead associate and has experience as a lead associate, don't send a resume in that talks about how you have supervisory experience. You know what I mean? The terms don't match up. This is partly based on the fact that recruiters, they don't understand job-specific lingo because their background is HR, not the job that they're hiring for, right? So the way they operate is they just say, I'm told that you need to have supervisory experience. So you better talk about supervisory experience. I don't understand what a lead associate is, Anyway, hopefully you understand the point there. I probably didn't do a great job of explaining it, but hopefully you get the idea. Fell into fall says, I received a higher interim position with a 30% salary increase. That's good. If I'm permanently selected, would you recommend negotiating a larger raise, or when do you think I could do so? That's unanswerable. I don't know your situation. I don't know the details of the role. I don't even know what country you're in or what industry you're in. So I can't say. You have to figure that out on your own. And some things that will inform you is what the industry average is for your role. That plays a small part in it. Where that company falls in terms of, does it pay the market price? Does it pay below market price, above market price for different roles, for the role you're in? What's normal? What level of experience and ability do you bring to the job? Are you towards the bottom of the range, towards the top of the range? Like, it varies on a bunch of things, so I can't answer that. Anyway, thanks, Bill. I come here from time to time. I've been watching your videos for years, and every time I start an interview process, I come back to watch them. Okay. Well, thanks for the leap of faith there, fell into fall. I appreciate it, and hopefully it's working for you. Best of luck. Alpine's Pal says, when buying a car, the number one advice is to hold your emotions away from the seller so that they can't use your weaknesses against you. Wow, that's intense. Do they really go into that level of psychology when you buy a car? In jobs, I'm not sure who's buying, selling, but I think I would say, I would call BS on that. That's not true. When you're buying a car, first of all, either you know what you want or you don't. And if you don't know what you want, that makes it simple because you can just go to any place and say, well, I'm prepared to pay X. And they say, well, no, sorry, we don't sell it for X. We sell it for X plus 40. And say, okay, well, listen, goodbye. Let me know when you change your mind. Right. And then You know what I mean? If it's a bluff, they'll usually chase you and they'll go, wait. Okay, come on back. Let's talk, right? If it's legitimate, what they said, then they just let you walk out. And the idea is you don't really care what they think, because if you're not going to buy it here, you're going to buy it somewhere else, right? You just need a car of this type. You can get that from any dealership, right? You don't have to come here. So whichever person is going to cut you the best deal, that's where you buy it. It's pretty simple. And it has nothing to do with psychology. It has nothing to do with convincing them of anything. You know, I could give a rat's ass what these people think. And even if they think something, that's not going to affect their behavior. They're still going to try and push the price as high as it'll go, you know? So no, that's not what I would say, if I'm reading that right. Alpine Spal, and being as professional as possible, like blending in with the conversation. It's always good to be as professional as possible. I wouldn't be unprofessional. Yeah, that doesn't really get you very much. By the way, I've heard that if you're offered a drink, to always take it because it shows confidence, makes you think. Yeah, you can invent any logical reasoning you want to justify any flimsy kind of thing there. If they offer me a drink, I'll take it if I want it. If I don't want the drink, I'm not going to take it. Now, usually it's polite to take something that's offered, right? That's kind of etiquette. It's nothing to do with confidence. It's just etiquette. It's making the other person feel good, because otherwise you're saying no to somebody, and people do not like being told no. They don't like being told no, and they don't like being told you're wrong, even when they're wrong. And they know it. They don't want to be told you're wrong. That makes them angry on some level, right? So if you offer something to someone, the polite thing is for them to say, thank you very much. Yes, I appreciate that, right? That's what makes them feel good. If you say thank you, no, that's kind of, it's not rude. It's just that, they don't kind of feel as much warm fuzzies about you, right? On some subconscious level. Right. But if you genuinely don't want the drink, I'm not going to accept it just to be polite if we're in this kind of situation, right? If it's a more high stakes thing, if it's more like, you really are investing in the relationship and this relationship is hopefully going to be long term and stuff, then absolutely. SA340 says, I don't have the GM's email or phone number, but I have a connection with him on LinkedIn. Do you recommend DM him there, visit his office? There's no way to know if either one of those is more appropriate for this particular situation. I would send a message over LinkedIn and be done with it. I mean, why invest more into this at this point? It's been 2 weeks and they haven't got back to you. So I would send the follow-up, make it nice and polite, make it nice and friendly, and that's it. Keep moving forward. Awesome, Hoang Viet. That's great to hear. As a reminder, if you are confused as to how to get a job and how things work, and you want to learn about networking, and maybe you're an introvert, you're that kind of person, not super social, not super down with protocol and etiquette and how people communicate, stuff like this, check out that course, my Get Hired course, all my advice in one place. That's the de facto tool for learning this stuff from me. There's a link in the description. I've also made a video going into great detail about how that course works, what you get, how it works. So check that out if you're interested in that. The other course that may be of some use to people here, or some interest to people, is this one, right? Like a professional. This is everything that I learned about communication skills in my career, going from a supervisor when I started all the way to CEO when I ended my corporate career. Everything I learned about communication skills, I put into that course. So if you're interested in learning about that, check that out. Once again, link in the description box below this live stream. It is based around written communication, but it's but it's more like focused on what you say, like what is communicated. So that's something. If you're interested in learning that, check that out. Where do we leave off here? Francisco Fierros, if I'm saying that. I'm sure I'm not saying it. I never say a name right, so don't feel like you're being singled out. I've been following your advice for a while. Your advice has always been helpful. I'm conducting a pre-screening phone interview with a recruiter this afternoon. I'm ready to rock and roll. Thanks. Right on. That's great to hear, Francisco. I'm glad things seem to be going okay. If you ever have any questions, let me know. I do these live streams as a way of sort of being able to answer questions. I don't respond to written comments on my videos and stuff. It's just not very efficient. I can't type out long answers. So, but it's great that things seem to be going your way. Missed a Good Time says, thanks for the compliment. I was given that nickname by a friend while in college who noticed that I was always in good spirits no matter the occasion. Okay, well, that's a great trait. You know what I mean? If you're not mentioning that in a job interview, that might be something you might want to mention, because I think that's awesome. And I think a lot of employers would want people like that. I certainly would have. You want employees like that. You don't want a bunch of miserable, disgruntled, people that get offended over like absolutely everything. You want people that are just easygoing and they just, nothing's ever really a problem. They're very laid back. They can take everything in their stride and they're in a good mood. They're just happy. That's what people want. So that's a good thing. Alpine's Pal says, yeah, like you said, there is a gap between the present and the available college education content. So I think just finding your own path and finding what doesn't work so as not to waste years on skills that aren't in demand or otherwise don't produce much for you. Yeah, okay, well listen, just so you know, there is a little bit of a gap. This was about there being a gap between what's happening currently and what is taught in school. Now, I just want to say, in most situations, this is not something you worry about because the gap is negligible. In some areas that move very fast, like IT, security, things like that, it's more significant. You have to be more aware of it. But is it the end of the world? Usually not. I wouldn't take this little thing and say formal education is useless. I'm not getting any formal qualifications. I'm just going to learn everything myself. What do you call it? Like freelance, grassroots, self-taught kind of thing. I wouldn't go that far. That's misreading this. Okay. So just make sure you're not sort of over amplifying this principle. Okay. That's what I'd say. Okay, we've reached the end of the questions there. There's 33 people here. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. We can go a little bit longer if you guys have more questions. In the meantime, as I said before, check out my courses. I've already told you about this one. I've told you about that one. I have 3. So the third one is this. God, my screen is backwards. That's why I can't do this properly. This one, the $100 MBA. That's if you want to learn business. So if you're thinking of being an entrepreneur, you want to work for yourself, because that's a legitimate way to make money that has never been easier to do than it is right now. That's a path for some people. On Mondays, I do a regular live stream about entrepreneurship because I myself am an entrepreneur. I think it's a fantastic thing, but it's not for everyone. So if you are interested in that kind of thing, learning business is kind of really important. And it's basically the scientific study of how to make money. That's what business is. So when you get something like a MBA, a Master's of Business Administration, that's a master's degree in business. It's the gold standard of knowing business. So if you're looking for that, I have my own course for $100. $100, not 100,000. 100. It's unaccredited. That's the catch, of course. But it's if you're just looking for the knowledge, this has the most bang for the buck of anything around. You get a reading list of textbooks for every area, like marketing, accounting, finance, like all the areas, HR, organizational theory, economics, operations, everything. And they're the books that are used in place, like the textbooks that are used in places like Harvard Business School in their MBA program. So you're getting the same content as people in some of the top schools in the world, and I'm giving you videos that guide you through it. So the reason you would do this is because it's super flexible. You can do it on your own schedule. You don't have to take time off and go to school. You certainly don't have to pay 5 figures to do it. And if you're just interested in one area, like maybe marketing, you can just learn that area. You don't have to learn the others, right? And if you just want to skim the whole thing, you can skim the whole thing. There's no assignments, no exams, no tests. So you just learn the material. You can do practice problems if you want and really go deep, but you don't have to. It's super flexible. So if you just want the knowledge of business and how it all works, check that out. Best bang for the buck anywhere. Link in the description. Okay, we got some questions here. Let's see. Alpine's Pal says, no, not at all. Just to make the best use of your time. Yes. Okay, good. Chronex Dev. How do I smoothly explain a 3-year gap in my resume? I'm a software engineer. I got laid off near the end of the COVID era. I've been coasting on savings, but I want to get back into the workforce. Excellent question. Okay, here's the deal. Okay, I got to start at the beginning here. What are recruiters looking for? Are they looking for the most qualified candidate? No, they're not. Absolutely not. That's not what recruiters are looking for. Recruiters are looking for the least risky candidate. That's something completely different from the most qualified candidate. Okay? Now, the problem is that, you have to fit into like a pigeonhole, right? To be the least risky candidate. This is the thing. And if you've changed careers, that's a liability for them. If you've been an entrepreneur, you've had your own business for a while, maybe you're now trying to re-enter the workforce, become an employee again, that's a red flag for them. That says, well, you're the type of person that has their own thing going on the side, and we don't like that. You can't serve 2 masters. If you get a job here, you're also doing your own thing, that's not going to work. And you're the type of person that does your own thing, right? Risky candidate, right? Now, another thing that they don't like are work gaps, right? Especially current work gaps. That means it's been a while since you've been working last, right? They don't like that. The reasoning is that they really don't know why you weren't working. Oh, sure, you've got an explanation. Yeah, sure, you can justify yourself, but do they really have proof that that's not a lie? No, they don't. So there's always risk there. All they know is that you've been out of work and they're not 100% certain of what the reason was, right? So what they do is they classify you as a higher risk candidate, right? Because of a current work gap. That's the unfortunate reality. Okay? Now there's one thing that I know of that you can try, okay, that sometimes helps, okay? And that is if you are to frame it like you weren't out of work, you just went back to school, right? Like if you're in university or you're taking some educational program, that's not risky. That's perfectly legitimate, right? If that's what was going on. So what I'd recommend is try this. Go and immediately register for some free courses online or something. I don't know, whatever you want. Okay, so that you are legitimately taking some courses online. Then, when you either write your resume or you go to the interview or whatever the problem is, you're going to frame it as, well, I wasn't out of work. I just decided to go back to school. I brushed up on my skills. I updated them. I made sure that, now I'm trained in the latest methods. And now I'm ready to rejoin the workforce, and that's why I'm here. Right? So that seems quite legitimate. And if they ask you, okay, what course are you taking and stuff, and you could say, well, I'm taking this, I'm taking that. I've taken several courses in this area. I'm currently doing this one, right? So it's all legitimate. It's all above board. You're not lying about anything, right? Because you are taking some education, right? And you could try that, and that kind of frames it in a way. The other things that are common that I've heard, I don't like them. Like, for example, some people say, well, just say you're caring for a sick family member or something. It's like, yeah, okay, but the problem with that is that it suggests that now you're the type of person that has sick family members that you suddenly have to like quit your job or take time off work and go on leave to care for them, like medical leave. That's once again a high risk candidate. We don't want to hire someone who's got that liability when we could hire someone that doesn't have that liability, right? So I've heard like other things too. I don't want to say they never work or anything, but I don't like them because they still keep that uncertainty open. Whereas if you say I went to school and I brushed up on my skills and now I'm ready to rejoin the workforce, that's a more predictable thing. That's not something that you're not in control of, right? Okay, so that's what I would say. Now you're out of work for 3 years. That's a long work gap. Okay. Now, by the way, this begs the question: how do people change careers? How do they have work gaps? Like, people get hired after work gaps. Yes, they do. Sometimes you can sort of try and explain it to a recruiter. Sometimes they'll believe you and they'll not hold it against you. But the main reason how people recover from something like this and a bunch of other things is they get the job through networking, right? 80% of jobs are gotten through networking, not posted job ads. A lot of introverts and technical people don't realize this, but don't take my word for this. If that's you and you're hearing about this the first time and it's surprising and your immediate reaction is to think BS, don't take it from me. Go do your own research. Go find that this is true. And once you realize it's true, then you can ask the question, how do I get hired through networking, right? The short answer is there's many different ways. One common way is something like direct outreach that we've talked about earlier in this live stream, where you reach out to employers and you don't talk to recruiters, you talk to hiring managers. When you sit down with a hiring manager, that's the boss, right, that you would report to, and they have a conversation with you and they can tell you know your stuff, and they get along with you and it just clicks on a personal level. They won't give a crap about a 3-year work gap. They'll see that you're a clear asset and you could do whatever the job is, and that paves the way for them hiring you. Okay, so try that. So to sum up, try the whole framing it as education. Make sure it's not a lie. Go out and register for some free courses or something, just so you can say, like, legitimately, I'm taking these courses. And try it that way. You can also try and explaining it away to a recruiter, I suppose, for what it is. But I would try the education spin. Also, in parallel with that, try getting jobs on the hidden job market. Go connect to hiring managers and do that. I've got a ton of resources about that, including that course, if you want to learn how to do that from beginning to end. And those are some great options. That usually overcomes it. Louisa, how do you say NG? Is it ng? I know that's a common name. Hi, Bill. How to answer the question, do you have any questions for me at the end of an interview with an HR? Okay, you got to stop calling them HR. They're called recruiters. HR stands for Human Resources. It's the name of the department, not the name of the person. Inside the HR department, they have people that deal with all kinds of stuff, including payroll, including conflict resolution, including hiring, like recruitment and selection. So a recruiter is not called an HR. They're called a recruiter. Okay, now to answer your question, that's one of the standard job interview questions. It comes at the end of a job interview. They're going to ask you this. Never say no. Always have questions. Okay? That's the basic answer. Let's go beyond to an intermediate answer. Okay? you may have legitimate questions. Okay? There's a ton of things you don't know about the job. You don't know about the benefits. You don't know about the working conditions. You don't know about the supervisor. You don't know about the nature of the work, really. You don't know about opportunities for advancement, et cetera, et cetera. It would be very tempting to ask the stuff that you legitimately want to know about. Right? It's understandable that you might want to ask that stuff because after all, they're prompting you for it, right? There are some standard questions you could ask. You could say, things like, like what do you think about working with this company? Stuff like that. There's all kinds of more advanced questions, like, if are there things in other candidates that you've seen that you haven't yet seen in me that I could perhaps speak to? Things like that. You could say, if you were the CEO of this company, what would you change about it? Stuff like that. I don't recommend stuff like that. But what you've got to realize, and now we're getting into the advanced stuff here, what you got to realize is that this question is every bit as much a performance as every other question in a job interview, right? Just like when they ask you, what are your weaknesses? You don't just give them all your worst weaknesses, because then you've just eliminated yourself, right? It's kind of a bit of an ambush, They say, tell me something about your previous boss that you really didn't like. And if you answer that question and give them what they want, you've just given them a reason to eliminate you, which they probably will do. So this question is every bit as much a bit of theater as every other question in a job interview. Now, what are they looking for in a candidate? Well, they're looking for someone who wants to do this job, wants to do this kind of work, right? They're also looking for someone who's going to get along with everyone, right? They're not going to rock the boat. They're going to fit in. They're going to get along. They're going to interoperate and collaborate with everyone really well, right? And they're also looking for someone who is qualified and capable of doing the job, right? You're fully qualified. You can do the job. That's not an issue, right? So wouldn't it be great if you could ask 3 questions? The fact that you are asking these questions signal to them that you're a very agreeable person. You get along with everyone. That's something you're tuned into, right? You're fully qualified to do the job. That doing the job is not a major concern. So you're signaling to them that you're qualified to do the job, right? And also that you're someone who wants to do this type of work, right? So by choosing 3 strategic questions to ask them, wouldn't it be great if you could make them believe that you had all those 3 things? Hopefully you do, but wouldn't that be great if those questions could serve to convince them? Because someone who doesn't want the job is not going to ask them that question. You know what I'm saying? Someone who's not capable of doing the job is not going to ask that question, right? Okay? So that hopefully frames it for you. For things like showing your agreeableness, you could say, like, what's kind of the mechanism for making sure that, there's no miscommunications and everybody gets along properly, or something like that, Like, you could ask things like this. Now, that kind of shows that you're thinking about that. You're wanting to get along with people. You're wanting everything to go smoothly. That's a great quality, right? That's kind of you're asking the right questions, For the qualified thing, saying something like, that signals that you understand the role. You understand how to do the work. So you can ask maybe a more, if you're talking to a hiring manager, you can ask a more technical question about the role and say, like, when you encounter this kind of thing, how do you guys overcome it here? Do you do this or do you do that? Something like that, right? And, someone who's passionate about the job. I'd have to think on exactly what question you would ask. It's hard to do this when, like, I'm live. I think when I'm got people figuratively staring at me. But that's the idea. You would ask a question that signals you want this job, right? So that's actually the theme of this live stream. Technically, the title is "The Job Interview Magic Words That Get You Hired," And just as a reminder, if you don't remember what those are, it's saying to them, I want this job. I want to tell you something. I want to make sure you're listening. And they say, yeah. And you say, listen, I want this job. This is a great opportunity for me. It allows me to bring all my skills and experience from different areas into this. It's a big step forward. I'm really excited about it. So I want this job. Something like that. That works a lot of magic in interviews because that's what they're looking for. Anyway, hopefully I've been some help to you on that. It's partially useful. I do have a couple of videos that talk about this and they answer the question that I did several years ago. So check those out. Alpine's Pal says, me, it's easy to say you don't care about what the sellers say, but as when buying anything, you can't know everything. So walking in blind, especially if you're on a conservative budget. Okay, sure. Not to get too far into it, it's just in jobs when I feel like I did well and let loose and get excited and say awkward things, especially in the context of a job interview. Yeah, you got to maintain a little bit of discipline. You got to learn about making a good impression and learn about people, what they like, what they don't like. Sometimes we can overshare. Sometimes we can, go on at excessive length that maybe protocol would kind of dictate you rail that in. In other words, I start making more mistakes and go off track. That literally is a deal breaker. Sorry for the grammar. Yeah, well, that's why we do practice interviews, right? Like mock interviews. That's the best way to prepare. There's sort of two phases of preparing for job interviews. The first one is to work by yourself, learn, what the standard questions are, learn what the answers are, memorize them, all the behavioral questions, figure out what your stories are that you're going to draw from your pool of stories, vet them, practice saying them in, a compact format. Right, memorize them. That's all the first phase. The second phase is you sit down with someone. It could be a friend or a family member. It could be, a HR person because they sell these services. If you have money and you're doing this, it could be a career coach. A lot of career coaches that people get. They get to do mock interviews with them. That's a main tool. And then you practice it. You do it like it's a real interview. They ask you questions, and then you do it like it's a real interview. That's the real rehearsal. And if it feels weird and awkward, that's good because that simulates what a real job interview feels like to most people. You know what I mean? So that's the best kind of preparation. It's not enough just to memorize the answers yourself in a mirror or in front of a camera or something. You got to practice with someone else. That's how you get good. You could grab like a family member, just, some person who's loitering around the place, just say, hey, come here. We're going to do this. I'm going to give you a list of questions, or you go and get a list of questions off the internet or ask ChatGPT for a list of questions, whatever, and then interview me. And this is going to be a rehearsal for me, right? And then you do a bunch of those. And if you do like 30 or 40, that's 3 or 4 a day for like 10 days, you're going to knock it out of the park. You're not going to be nervous about this crap. You'll have been asked every question under the sun. You know the standard questions, the answers to them backwards and forwards. And there's no danger of you forgetting what to say or not knowing what to say, and then with that comes confidence, and then you don't make your rookie mistakes by losing jobs in actual interviews. You make your rookie mistakes at home, rehearsing, and then you succeed with your interviews when they're real. LPPEL, I love ZOPA. Yeah, Zone of Possible Agreement. Donnie Schultz is saying something. Cronax says, awesome stuff. I appreciate the response. Well, good. You're welcome. I'm glad that was somewhat helpful. Willie Bro says, I'm interviewing for a remote accounting job. How do I let them know that my preferred start date is January? Well, you could say my preferred start date is January. That might work. I get a bonus at my current remote job if I stay until December 31st. Well, just saying I'm available in January. Probably do it. Um, Guy 303I says, do you give advice about keeping jobs or just getting hired? Well, I can give advice on keeping a job. If you ask me a question about keeping a job, sure, yeah. World and Worldly says, how to answer behavioral questions in a technical interview. Well, it's not really technical if they're asking you behavioral questions, is it? Behavioral questions are about, they ask you like a question that starts with like, tell me about a time, you did a certain thing. And so everybody's answer is going to be unique to them, right? The way you answer those questions is you do it in reverse, right? The problem is there's like literally a million different behavioral questions they could ask you. There's no way to like, plan out answers for each one and then memorize them. That's not possible to do. So the way you do it is you do it in reverse. You figure out 10 stories from your past, right? You can start with like your most shining moments at work, right? Your biggest successes. That's good. You could talk about a couple of failures, like, how you handled failures, how you handled maybe creativity, you showed creativity, common ones are conflicts with various people, like conflict with a coworker, conflict with a boss, conflict with a customer, if that applies to you. Things like this. So the idea is that you pick like a good cross section of stories, 10 in all, from your past. These shouldn't be hard to remember because they all happened to you, And then what you do is you vet them. You make sure that like, okay, if I tell this story, it doesn't signal anything negative about me. I'm actually doing the right thing, right? And it's something I would do again. I'm not telling a story where I did handle it this one way, but that's actually the wrong way. In future, I would handle it a different way. You don't tell those stories, right? So you tell something the way you did it is the way you would do it again, right? Because that's the reason why they're asking these questions. They don't care about your past. They want to know what you would do in the future if this came up. Right? So you vet these stories, you practice saying them in a very compact format. The STAR format is very popular. Situation, task, action, result. I was here, I was assigned this, here's what I did. I did this, it turned out that way, I got commended for it. There you go, here's my story. Right? So you rehearse that. Then, when you go to the interview, and they ask you a behavioral question, whatever behavioral question they ask you, you're going to pull out one of those 10 stories as the answer, whichever one is closest to it. And, you might change a few words here and there to slightly rephrase it, depending on what specifically they asked you. But that's how you handle it. So you're never stumped, for an answer when they ask you a behavioral question. And you always have something that's vetted that passes a few tests that you're going to say. And, you say it in an appropriate way. You don't take 10 minutes trying to tell the story and it rambles on and then they cut you off, Okay, so that's basically the approach to handling behavioral questions. Alpine's pal says. And fist bump. Is that a fist bump? Or is that not? It's pointing. Right? It's not doing this, right? You can't really see my hand. To go over here and do like that, right? That kind of thing. That's what you do in person to people. In a business meeting. It goes over really well. Okay, we've reached the end of the live streams, or sorry, I'm sick. We've reached the end of the chat feed questions. There's 28 people here. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. Hopefully this has been somewhat helpful. Check out my courses, especially this one, if you're confused as to how to get a job or how to get hired in the hidden job market, how to do networking if you're an introvert or any of that stuff. That's all my advice, all in one place. My Get Hired course. Check that out if you want to go deeper with me. Link in the description. I will be back actually in 20 minutes on this channel. I got another live stream booked. It's an episode of Honest HR Nitrous. That's what it's called. That's where we talk like this. I answer your questions and we talk about, job search, but not the theory behind it. We talk about how it's done in the real world, warts and all, fake jobs, ghosting, rude recruiters, the whole shebang-a-bang. So come back in 20 minutes if you got more questions. Other than that, thanks very much for being here. Best of luck to you. Never forget you're awesome. Don't let anybody convince you otherwise. I will see you soon. Take care.